What do you do when you've got a teenage girl, 13 years old, who's just stopped talking to you? All of the responses are monosyllabic. You're trying so hard and getting absolutely nowhere. Today, we answer that tricky question. Welcome to the Happy Families Podcast. Real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson, and every Tuesday on the pod, we answer your tricky questions. If you'd like to submit a question about family, relationships, the kids, well-being, screens, discipline, you can kind of ask us pretty much anything at all. Submit your tricky questions via our super simple system at happyfamilies.com.au. Just go to the website, scroll down to podcasts, click the record button and start talking. Lisa from Sydney submitted this one.
I have a 13-year-old girl who refuses to answer me in anything other than a monosyllabic way. I was wondering if you have any tips, tricks or techniques to initiate conversations that help her open up so that we can really start to have some of these important conversations. I've tried everything and I'm getting a little desperate.
So, Kylie, assuming typical development is going on here, my thoughts are we wouldn't know anything at all about teenage girls who get a little bit surly, who don't want to talk to their parents and who start to push everyone away. Having raised 5 kids through that 13-year age bracket now.
You make it sound like it was in the past. Are we not still going through it?
2 teenagers with 1 to go. Maybe a little bit. There's a reality, and Lisa, this might be hard to hear, but I believe that we get to do the majority of our parenting prior to the age of 12 or 13. By the time your child is 13, influence shifts. Kids start to focus more on what their peers are saying and doing, and they certainly move away from us. Some estimates suggest that by the age of 13, we have done 75 to 80% of our hands-on parenting. The kids get older, they spend less time with us, we spend less time with them, they get jobs, they're involved in extracurricular stuff, and it just disappears. You've got 936 weekends.
When you put it like that, it feels like such a harsh reality. I think about the person I was in those really young years. I was completely deprived of sleep, exhausted, not the best person.
that's when you have the most hands-on family.
I would like to be. Yeah. And yet you're telling me that that's when I have the most influence.
Well, I mean, the first couple of years are particularly tough, but you think about it. In terms of weekends, like I said, 936 weekends across 18 years. But once the kids turn 13, 14, 15, they start getting jobs. They spend more time with their friends. From the age of 13, that 936 weekends is down to 260 weekends. By the time they're 15, that's 156 weekends. And that's assuming you get to spend every weekend with them. I mean, I would say to Lisa, you're right on the cusp here. This is the tipping point around age 13 where moving into healthy, strong relationship sort of status is increasingly important, and yet it is increasingly tricky.
You won't read this in any parenting book, but a couple of months ago, one of our girls was going through this exact situation. And I thought, you know what? She needs to know how this feels. And so I actually returned the favour back.
Oh, no. You haven't told me about this. This didn't show up in our I'll be better tomorrow conversation. What happened?
I just gave her one-word answers. Whenever she asked me anything, I just said, yep, nope.
Really?
She got so frustrated with me within about half an hour of her trying to have a conversation where I wouldn't give her any other answer. She's like, Mum, why aren't you talking to me?
Right.
And I kind of looked at her and I said, no. You know what? I said, this is what it feels like. I said, I try so hard to have honest, open conversations with you, and this is what I get. It doesn't feel nice.
Well, that wasn't in my list of things that we could encourage Lisa to do. But do you know what? It's hard for me to say. You can hear me stammering and stumbling as I kind of try to spit it out. But sometimes the kids just the reality is, okay, so sometimes this is personality. Sometimes kids, as they get older and go through their developmental phases, they do quiet down. They do sort of step away. They do want to be in their own head a little bit. But sometimes they are just being really temperamental and really egocentric and really arrogant and entitled. Sometimes that's what they're doing.
Sometimes I think they actually don't know what they feel. Like for me, I know that so often when I feel emotionally flooded.
Yeah.
And you're laughing, but the reality is for a teenager, there are so many emotions going through their head at any given time, regardless of whether you're a catalyst to it or not.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about my last 15 years raising teenage girls. It's so much emotion, much emotion.
And for me, often what was going on is that my head was so full of emotions, and the funnel to get those emotions out narrows, right? So in my head, it's massive, but then you get down to the actual narrow part of your funnel and I couldn't get anything out because I didn't know which one needed voicing.
I'm making fun of it, but having watched it, what I do know is that in those moments, the times that we have turned towards our children, we've embraced them or we've shown some compassion, recognize that there might be a struggle or some suffering going on that we hadn't previously seen, it makes all the difference. And so as much as we can laugh about how much of an emotional cyclone teenage girls can create in the home.
I thought you were going to say psycho.
Cyclone, L-O-N-E, cyclone. The reality is when a child is not responding, when a child is pushing back, when a child is giving you big reactions, they usually don't need to be reprimanded. They need to be understanded.
Understand?
Well, I was trying to make it rhyme. Get curious, not furious. Understand, don't reprimand. Explore, don't explode. I thought I was doing really well until I realised where I'd painted myself into this corner where something wasn't going to rhyme or alliterate. Gosh.
Well, just to finish and round off my story.
Right.
Well, I definitely wanted to paint a very clear picture of what I was experiencing. The most important part out of that process was as soon as she snapped and realised what was going on, we were able to sit down and have a really good conversation. And I actually haven't had that behaviour since.
Sometimes letting the kids know that something's not acceptable. My preference is just to say, I'm going to give you another chance to say that to me a little more politely.
Sometimes I think you just need to see it. You
Yeah.
actually need
totally.
to have the visual. You need to kind of recognise, oh, hang on a sec, that's how she perceives this. Or, I wasn't doing it out of malice.
So, Lisa, that's a couple of options. After the break, I'll give you another 5. Okay, we're talking about Lisa and her monosyllabic 13-year-old, doesn't really want to talk, really struggling. We've covered off, you can give her a bit of her own medicine. We've also talked about empathy, kindness, turning towards and compassion. And we've highlighted the personality changes that can occur around this age and the developmental reality of being influenced by friends.
I'd never be a teenager again. You could not pay me enough.
In the front of Misconnection, the book that I wrote about raising teenage girls, I've got this amazing quote from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. That's the book that Rowling didn't write, that became the stage play. And Draco Malfoy is talking to Harry Potter. They're both adults. They're raising their own kids. And Draco says this beautiful thing, and he says it so succinctly. People say parenting is the hardest job in the world. It's not. Growing up is.
Yeah.
So here are some other solutions that could be helpful if you have a teenager who's not talking. First of all, don't worry about having conversations. Don't try to force conversations.
Yeah.
Force creates resistance.
Well, that's kind of where I was going, right?
Right,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah, no. Rebuild the relationship by spending time together. Kids spell love T-I-M-E. So find a way to spend time in a way that feels good for her.
So this is tricky, and it goes back to child development. When you think about a toddler, when they first start exploring and playing, they don't actually play with other people. They play all by themselves.
Yeah, they call it parallel play.
And then as they progress, they then start playing by themselves next to other people. And when our teenagers are in this flux, they're not ready. For whatever reason, they're not ready to socialise.
Doesn't play well with others.
They don't play well with others.
Right.
That's exactly right. So finding something that you can do where you can essentially play individually side by side is a really wonderful way to start to rebuild and reconnect.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Fun and games, her ideas, doing things side by side, not face to face. That's my next tip. The next one that I want to point to is this. Choose your timing. If a conversation needs to be had, there are some times where it will work very well and sometimes where it will work quite poorly indeed.
How good are you picking your timing?
I feel like this is a loaded question. Just because you know something doesn't mean that you do it all the time.
I thought you were going to say just because you know something doesn't mean you have to blurt it out as soon as they walk through the door.
I am not very good at withholding, am I? If something's on my mind, let's just talk about it now. Let's just deal with it now. Let's just
fix it. Let's just fix it.
I'm getting better at kicking things down the road. I'm getting better at pausing, waiting till the right time, sitting in the discomfort for a little longer till everyone's emotions have settled.
So timing is so important, not just for your teenager, though. It's important for us because we're processing at the same time.
Right.
And if there is a particularly challenging conversation, if we're fueled with emotion, where is this conversation going to lead? Nowhere positive.
Right. So high emotions equals low intelligence. I'd be looking for this, though. I'd be looking for when my daughter is talking. So I might have a child who is refusing to talk to me, but we come together for our family meal and she's laughing and playing with everybody else and having a great time singing songs or talking, which means there may be some conflict between us, or maybe now is a good time because the emotions have settled and we can catch up just briefly. I usually find the car or bed or just going for a walk are the best times for these conversations.
One of our children really, really struggled to have conversations, any kind of conversation. She could talk to her friend about
for hours
and hours and hours about any Disney movie. She could recite all of the lyrics of any song. She just loves to talk. But when it came to anything that required a bit of herself,
your vulnerability with parents,
she really, really struggled. And I one day decided that this kid loves writing. She absolutely loves writing. She would write pages and pages as she tried to create new stories and things in her head and put them down on paper. And so I created a little journal, an opportunity for me to write her a letter and tell her what I was thinking and how I was feeling and how much I loved her and the things that I saw in her that I admired. And slowly but surely, she not only started responding, but she started opening up. And I just acknowledged to her, I recognized that having conversations sometimes were hard. But this was a beautiful way for me to connect with her in her time and her language.
Yeah, it works so well. A couple of other things. A couple of weeks ago, on January 25, our special weekend edition, an interview with Charles Duhigg, New York Times best-selling author, Pulitzer Prize winner. We talked about deep questions. Rather than saying, how was your day or what's going on, asking questions like, what do you admire about your friend? Or how did that affect you? Or what was the most challenging thing you went through today at school? Or who did you help? Because we want to get into contribution rather than ego. Or what's your favorite memory? Just asking questions.
What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, asking questions that are meaningful tend to inspire better conversations. Of course, everything we've talked about already matters, like choosing your timing and making sure that they're happy to be in your space. But I would go back and have a listen to that conversation with Charles Duhigg, episode 1160 on the 25th of Jan, especially the bit about deep questions. Lisa, I think it will be helpful. Two last things. We've approached this question with very little information from the voice note that's been left. We don't know if there's something more serious going on. We've taken a fairly standard developmental approach to this, but it could be serious. We're not trying to frighten anybody, but it's important that we have medical checkups, that we're checking phones, making sure there's no bullying going on. Maybe a phone has come into her life and you've just lost your daughter to her phone and she wants to be on that all day and night. Maybe there aren't appropriate boundaries. Maybe she's just tired. So we want to make sure that we're considering some of the more serious things that it could be. Generally, it's not, but we have to acknowledge that.
Just like our daughter who didn't want to talk to us and really, really struggled until I started writing things down with her, they do grow out of it. They do move through it. And if you will be consistent and persistent over time, your relationship will continue to grow.
Lisa, there is hope. We promise. We've been through it with 5, soon to be 6 of our own, and it does get better. You do get there. If you'd like to submit a tricky question, we have our super simple system at happyfamilies.com.au. Scroll down to podcasts, click the record button, start talking. We answer another one of your tricky questions next Tuesday, and we just love hearing from you. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information and resources to make your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.